A women's rights attorney who's also a Muslim says that America faces a greater threat for mass shootings than radical Islamists. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Yes, Qasim Rashid in the Washington Post says that great threat, more significant than Islamic terrorism, is men. That's right, men. Men are a much bigger threat, in fact, and far more people die on an annual basis as a result of male mass shooting violence than just generic Muslim jihadist kind of violence. Let me read a quote from Rashid here. The desire to blame religion detracts from the true root cause of these repeated acts of violence, toxic masculinity. In fact, Rashid continues, quote, estimates suggest that white men and Christians make up the majority of mass shooters. Now, Rashid is not alone in this. In fact, the New York Times had a piece back in June of 2016, June 17th, I believe, noting the striking similarities between Islamic terrorist slaughter and what they called intimate terrorism. In other words, domestic violence that breaks out in gunfire that kills more than a couple of people, okay? And by the way, the numbers that you hear when you talk about mass shootings, there are two different ways of characterizing numbers. The typical numbers that you hear that make it sound like there's a huge amount of it, hundreds of episodes a year, are typically individuals who are going in on some sort of a personal issue, a domestic violence related issue, and multiple people get swept up in those shootings rather than the guy just wading into the mall and randomly shooting people. So the abusive husband, according to these New York Times experts, taken to the extreme, is tantamount to the slaughter caused by the Islamic State. Now, this is a fascinating concept, gentlemen. I mean, considering, for example, the motivations of Omar Mateen, who shot up that gay nightclub in Florida, the Pulse nightclub, a visiting professor at the City College of New York says that we were making assumptions about Mr. Mateen that may not be true. For example, the fact that he was raised by Muslims from Afghanistan, immigrants, may not actually be the cause. She says he is the outcome of the United States political culture, not of Islam. All right, gentlemen. Now, I have twisted feelings about this. So, Stephen, I'm going to go to you first and say, how do you ask a fair question about this? I guess.
Don't ask
Why are
a
you
fair
bothering
question,
to try?
Because I already know what I want to say, regardless of what you ask me.
Because I know, Stephen Green, you would not minimize the danger posed by domestic violence and guys who go off with a gun and shoot their wives and children or loved ones. But what is the greater danger in minimizing the threat of Islamic jihadism or of so exaggerating the threat of domestic violence mass shootings that you begin to look at every man as a potential shooter?
Well, that's the idea, isn't it? We're presumed guilty because of our genitalia and our toxic testosterone levels. Look, let's. I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this on their terms. I'm going to play this straight. I'm going to say yes. We absolutely have this equal problem of men being killers, and some of them are domestic abusers, and some of them are Islamists, and let's take a look at these two groups. You know, for domestic abuse cases that turn deadly, we have systems in place to deal with this. We have shelters for women who want to seek help. We have counseling for men who need help with their own issues. We have jails to lock them up when that fails. We have an entire criminal system set up to deal with people who can't express themselves in a peaceful manner. That's why we have a criminal justice system that has been in place in the English-speaking world for just hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's one of the it's one of the highest achievements of civilization, of human civilization, and we have that in place. Now, on the other side, you have these Islamists who shout Allahu Akbar after they're done killing a lot of people because that's what they learned in U.S. civics. Did I hear you correctly there, Scott? They got that from the U.S. political culture, Allahu Akbar?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. These folks, we have to have different means of dealing with them because, by and large, they come from overseas where Allahu Akbar is just, what you say, and murder is just what you do. And the system we have to deal with them is, by and large, the United States military. And the United States military is not something that you want equipped with low testosterone, low T males. That's where you want that masculinity to exist and be channeled and protect this great nation of ours, this great civilization of ours, from those who say that Allahu Akbar is a great thing to do after you've slaughtered a bunch of people.
Now, Bill Whittle, Qasim Rashid also said this, and I quote, "Mass violence and domestic violence will stop when men learn to control themselves." I was going to ask a question here, Bill, but I think I'll just say go.
So says the apologist for a culture that looks as rape as basically a luxury that you're able to commit, and that a woman needs, what is it? They need 4 witnesses in Islamic law for a woman to be proven that she'd actually been raped. This is from a culture that basically brutalizes their young men, doesn't allow young men and women to hold hands or listen to music or kiss or any of that stuff, go to dances, none of that. It's a religion that treats women like animals and puts them in little sacks and has them locked behind pens just like any other animals. It's a pretty high compliment to your sophisticated, and by sophisticated I mean your ability to be a sophist, skills and talent set to make this about domestic violence coming from somebody representing Islam, which is, if not the cruelest religion to women in the world or the history of the world, you got to admit it's in the finals, right? I mean, it's in the semis certainly. This kind of thing is the exact kind of hat trick that you do when you know you're wrong and you've got to do something to deflect the blame. So what this person's basically saying is, instead of looking at Muslim men, we should look at men in general. Okay, why don't we just widen it up even further? Why don't we just look at primates? It's going to be a primate problem. Maybe it's a mammal problem. Perhaps, as Scott said yesterday on our conference call, it might be a vertebrate problem that we're dealing with here. Chordates, that's really where the trouble is. So if we're going to deal with a problem, rather than making the problem bigger, don't you think it makes more sense to make the problem smaller? It is a vertebrate problem, yes, these mass shootings. It is a mammalian problem. It's, in fact, a primate problem. And it's a human problem. And it's a human male problem. All true. But as far as human males go, the Islamic human male seems to be particularly prone to this kind of thing. And what is especially fascinating, galling, and disgusting about this person's argument is that while they're making the case about mass shootings, if you want to talk about domestic violence, brutality, striking, hitting, lack of respect, lack of trust, lack of anything, you cannot do better than the Islamic religion that this creature is trying to defend.
I think women's rights attorney was the term you were looking for there, Bill.
That's right. That's the term I was looking for, this women's rights attorney.
Well,
an Islamic women's rights attorney is such an oxymoron that you just have to start from that position, right?
I'm glad to hear there's one. That there's somewhere out there is
There's one, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'd be the last person in the world to try to dampen down anybody drawing attention to the crisis in American homes where women are abused and beaten, and frankly, sometimes men are, but more often than not, it's male on female abuse and violence. I used to work with an organization, ran it, volunteered on the phones called the Abuse Network, which provided counseling and recommendations for how to find shelter and safety and medical care and things like that to women who were victims of rape and domestic violence. So you never want to play that down. But I think that this writer, while maybe intending well and trying to draw attention to something that they see as a significant problem as well, has done no favors either to Muslims or to women, for that matter, by essentially clouding the issue. Because let's face the facts. After a mass shooting involving a non-Muslim man as the one who pulled the trigger, what organization claims credit for it? Which organization stands up and releases a press release that says, hey, that was us, the National Organization for Men, Hail Men? It doesn't happen. You know, there's a reason why people are skittish around folks who come from Muslim-dominated countries in some cases, and it's because when one of these things happen, it is proclaimed as having been done in the name of their God and of their faith and of their prophet, of their religion. And so I think, you know, you really cloud the issue when you start blaming, you know, toxic masculinity for something akin to the same thing that's going on here. And then the second thing is, if we are going to do that, if we're going to say toxic masculinity is the problem, well, then I think we should treat it the way we say that the left treats Islamic jihadism. Well, first of all, whose fault is toxic masculinity? I blame the U.S. government. I blame us. After all, we have not been kind to these people, and look at the price we pay. But why do they hate us so? You know, that's the kind of mentality that is going into this thinking. I just don't think it's helpful. I think you can oppose Islamic jihadist terrorist slaughter, and you can oppose domestic violence, but conflating the two and treating it as if it were one thing, and in fact, the latter being more significant than the former, I think you do harm to everybody, including in the process beclowning yourself. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. This is Right Angle. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making it possible.